So the topic for today is self-therapeutic philosophy. What's this? So it is the main question. But there are a couple of questions that need clarification, and I will present 5 questions. I will try to explain why these questions are important, and after I will try to answer these questions, and after that I would like to discuss. So the first question I would like to put forward at this moment is therapy and self-therapy the same thing? Of course, all the time we are talking about philosophical context. So when we are saying therapeutic philosophy, shouldn't we talk or think more about self-therapeutic philosophy rather than therapeutic philosophy? So it is the first issue, because the assumption being here that philosophical therapy aims or should aim at enabling others to engage in self-therapy. If it is the case, philosophers' job would be to show others what could be done to, for example, to reduce unhappiness so that they themselves could do it as self-therapy. So here is the idea that we are not doctors. We are not people who have training to do the therapist's job. But perhaps we have. This is the first question. The second question is philosophical therapy or philosophical self-therapy mainly about cultivating appropriate habits of actions or training healthy routine? Here, at this question, there is kind of Stoic pragmatist idea. I mean, both pragmatic and both Stoic, that habits of actions is a very pragmatic idea, and appropriate actions is a very Stoic idea. So we can connect it into a sort of approach that this therapy or self-therapy in philosophical context should be cultivating appropriate habits of action, or, to use a more ordinary language, training healthy routine. But perhaps, and it is another perhaps, we need something deeper here, something philosophical dimension, or something like philosophical dimension that would make this approach more profound. For example, thinking about existential issues, thinking about the meaning of life, thinking about the role of individual in society. So profound questions to be reflected upon, deliberated, and this is a part of the story here. So it is not just cultivating appropriate habits of action, but perhaps something else. This is the question number 2. Question number 3 is who does require philosophical therapy? And I don't want to go into a strict or non-strict division between healthy people, ill people. We don't have to, I think, talk about that. But in this context, it may be helpful to think for a while that maybe healthy individuals, so answering the question, who does require philosophical therapy, maybe healthy individuals seeking to improve their lives, or those experiencing existential or mental challenges. But if the latter, should not ill people be treated only by doctors, by psychiatrists, by psychotherapists, and not by philosophers? Meaning, philosophers are not doctors. They can suggest, they can explain, they can show, but they cannot treat as doctors can, psychiatrists can. Question number 4. What is the role of rational argumentation, if any, within philosophical therapy? Or should it prioritize emotions like anxiety, anger, fear, or focus upon shaping appropriate habits, what I mentioned in issue number 2? But why I'm talking about that? Because, of course, Western philosophy has been so much dominated by this tone of scientific almost approach, rationalization, argumentation, providing or teaching skills how to argument well. And if this is the case, that philosophy is mainly focused upon rational argumentation, does it really help people who are in dire straits, in trouble, having emotional issues. So, or perhaps we should use these trajectories in Western philosophy or global philosophy that does not prioritize rational thinking, but some other things like empathy, for example, or love, or other feelings and emotions. So this is question number 4. Number 5, is philosophical self-therapy most effectively performed through philosophical counseling or coaching? If so, how do these practices differ from traditional therapy and from philosophical self-therapy? So the idea here is that perhaps philosophy would be nice, would be good, would be helpful in these contexts, but maybe it is part of philosophical repertoire that just philosophical counseling or philosophical coaching or different versions of coaching, like maybe existential coaching, these should be helpful in the cases we are talking about, but not philosophy in general, especially academic philosophy. So this is the question number 5. And I'm trying to answering, I start with showing you the starting point, and this is the idea of John Locke, who coined the term Stoic Pragmatism and exposed main ideas in his book written or published in 2012. And the main thing here is that Stoic pragmatism would be of little interest to me if it were only a theory. Does it? I quote John Locke. So it is a strong exposition of the practicality of philosophy, of philosophical approach. It is not, so Stoic pragmatism is not something that would look for a new theory or a better theory or a more attractive theory about something. Rather, it is something like what ancient Stoics and ancient philosophers wanted, really. It was practicality. So I continue quoting John Locke. I mean for it to guide practices and express attitudes that shape life and that can meet the pragmatic test of making it better. So it's, in my view, a clear combination of these two traditions, although they are very different, but at some points they are very close. And here they are very close. I mean, Stoicism, pragmatism, that here is a focus upon attitudes that shape life, so it's very practical, and that can meet the pragmatic test of making it better. So melioration or betterment or advancement or progress in the quality of life is at stake here. It is another quote from another book of John Locke's about the role of philosophers. And this is, it says, the role of philosophers is to occasion the examination of public and private purposes and assist in carrying it forward intelligently and with vigor. This is particularly true of bioethicists as they deal with decision-making in the clinical context and with public policies relating to human health. Again, we have a very practical approach, and again, it's a question of, are philosophers really the good guys to deal with medical treatment? Or rather, it is a sort of assistance that would have an aim in clarification, with a rationalization, with argumentation of some complex contexts. What I wanted to do and still want to do is to develop the idea of Stoic pragmatism in different contexts. And one of my areas in which I did it was my book published in 2023 about Stoic pragmatism. And in this book, I continue John Locke's idea or approach by saying that the best that philosophers can do is to convincingly show, by reading, by discussing, by showing examples taken from real life, how to convert obstacles into something profitable, or, if this is not possible, at least reduce the negative spread. This is the therapeutic component that Stoic pragmatism can offer in the name of its basic assumption that it is non-pragmatic and non-Stoic to give up and become frustrated having resources and opportunities around. How we can do that? Let me present very briefly 3 ideas or 3 examples of techniques that can be used in this context. So one would be focus on the present moment, being able to systematically change the ordinary into the extraordinary to elevate some contingent and seemingly trivial happenings into something more profound. Such an ability is one of the most effective cost-free ways of bettering the quality of quotidian life. So here is a partially an answer to the question, what is the role of philosophy here? Is it self-therapy or therapy? Here, I believe it is a suggestion that we should go into self-therapy direction because it is making a it's kind of proposal for people who want to listen that there is a technique that can be used systematically by anybody that would help elevate the ordinary, perhaps boring life into something a little bit more attractive when we are able to convert a regular moment into something special. The second would be negative visualization as a deliberate imagining adverse and worst case scenarios to avoid unwanted events from happening, or when they happen, to diminish the negative impact by building preparedness. Here, it is the idea that anybody, just anybody, using imagination, using the ability to predict some options in future, may reduce not nice things, perhaps stress as well, when we prepare some possible options just in case. It means that we would reduce stress, or we would reduce frustration perhaps, or we would be able to reduce some other non-pleasant things by being prepared to face challenges. Especially, it is interesting when these worst case scenario situations do not happen, which means that we are prepared. We have several options just in case, but the worst case scenario does not happen. And then we may feel kind of excitement, even success, that we were prepared to something that has not realized. And third technique is a sort of Stoic oikeiosis had different translations, but I use the translations used by modern Stoics, and it is widening circles of concern. It indicates the direction that my interests and social engagement should successively go. It pragmatically shows our energy, meaning, and skills should be invested first, and this is Socratic know yourself and Ciceronian cultivation of the self. And later on, when we are ready to take care of the relationship with others. Let me get back to the basics. Why are we talking about this relationship at all? First, because it is nowadays very popular topic to talk about these medical issues and philosophical tradition and so on. But in Stoicism, of course, we know that there was a very strong focus upon linking philosophy with medicine. And everybody knows that, for example, Epictetus claimed that it's a quote, philosopher's school is a surgery. And from Cicero. Cicero was not a Stoic, but was a strong sympathizer of Stoics. That philosophy is the medicine of the soul. However, it is not clear to me, and maybe you will help discuss this or explain to me, because it seems to me that Epictetus was suggesting in this quote that therapy or philosophical therapy would be needed by people of poor health, so not very healthy people, whereas Cicero would claim that it is kind of self-therapy rather than therapy. So Epictetus would say, I quote, "The philosopher's school, ye men, is a surgery. You ought not to go out of it with pleasure, but with pain. For you are not in sound health when you enter." And this is Epictetus. Cicero says, "Philosophy is certainly the medicine of the soul, whose assistance we do not seek from abroad, as in bodily disorders, but we ourselves are bound to exert our utmost energy and power in order to effect our cure." So, yeah, for me, it's interesting debate that relates to the topic of our meeting today. Is philosophy related more to therapy or to self-therapy? Or maybe there is not a very big difference and we don't need to discuss too much about this. New Stoicism, a very popular movement nowadays, and I'm using two representatives of New Stoicism here, Becker and Pigliucci. They were expressing their views in a very clear way. I quote Pigliucci: "Stoicism is a philosophy, not a type of therapy. The difference is crucial. A therapy is intended to be a short-term approach to helping people overcome specific problems of a psychological nature. It does not necessarily provide a general picture of philosophy of life." So we have as if a difference between philosophy and therapy. Something similar says Becker. "Stoic therapy," unquote, "therapy often implies an effort to correct various forms of ill health. Treating Stoicism as a form of alternative medicine, however, is problematic. It can sometimes guide diagnosis and treatment of psychological illnesses if and when related forms of cognitive and behavioral therapy can have good outcomes." Finally, we must not forget one of pragmatism's fathers, that is William James, who was also very famous psychologist. And he linked closely mental issues with somatic issues. Let me quote first. "The hypothesis here to be defended says that the one mental state is not immediately induced by the other, that the bodily manifestations must first be interposed between. We feel sorry because we cry, angry because we strike, afraid because we tremble, and not that we cry, strike, or tremble because we are sorry, angry, or fearful. To me, and tell me if I'm wrong, to me, it's a strong suggestion that there is the answer to the question number two, that philosophy understood as a kind of therapeutic approach should be focused upon appropriate habits of action or regular good life. So when you have a regular life, when you have the good life, you at the same time focus upon somatic and mental issues at the same time. Thank you.